Hello, everybody. My name is KGreen829, and welcome back to the AAC wrap-up show. So this wrap-up show is going to be going over the past 3 weeks, which is Week 13, Week 14, and Week 15, which is the conference championship game. I am recording this right now on Thursday, so I'm going to record the bits going over Week 13 and Week 14, and then once the conference championship game happens, I will record that part, and then finish it up, and then it will be posted. I do plan on doing, I want to do some off-season content, so I'll try and do that. I think some of it's going to have to be after, rosters are progressed and recruits have been added, because I'm going to do I'm just going to do a little something just talking about the new, I want to do something talking about the new teams that are joining the AAC. So that's definitely something I want to do, but maybe I'll do something about recruiting too, but that would also have to be after the new recruits are added. But we'll see what I end up doing. Until then, it's the conference championship week, but we're going to be starting off in Week 13. All right, this was the final week of the regular season where every team in the AAC played. First up, we had a nice matchup between Memphis and East Carolina. So we were at East Carolina, and what did we have going on? Well, we had a game that was pretty one-sided. We had Memphis putting up 95 yards and 2 interceptions through the air on 12 completions, and we had ECU's Steven Rivero with 147 yards, 2 touchdowns, and 3 interceptions on 11 completions. This game wasn't too much about passing; it was more about running. And when you look at the stats, you look at Steven Rivero, who on top of his 147 yards passing and his 2 touchdowns, had 164 yards rushing on only 19 attempts. Had a touchdown, but he did fumble the ball. Then you look at backup, Ryan Gobert. He's the starting running back, but, looking at this, you would assume that Rivero is starting at running back. But you got Ryan Gobert, 15 runs, 112 yards, just an outstanding game by these two on the ground. And just something that Memphis couldn't keep up with. Their top rusher was Tyler Smith, 15 attempts for 63 yards. He just couldn't match it. Then you look at the passing, and like I said, not too much focus on the passing game in this, so not too many breakout wide receivers, but you did see Denzel Green, 8 targets, only was able to catch it 3 times, but went for 73 yards and a touchdown. Jamie McCoy, also of ECU, 8 targets, 5 catches for 41 yards and a touchdown. No touchdowns in the passing game for Memphis, but Tyler Smith, the running back, on 4 targets, made 3 catches for 40 yards, and he was their best receiver in the game. Stephen Collins, who is usually a nice player for Memphis, was unable to find himself. He was targeted 11 times, but only caught the ball 2 times for 13 yards. I feel like that was a big reason that Memphis didn't perform so poorly, only putting up 7 points in the 28-7 loss. I forget if I said the score, but only putting up 27 points, losing 28-7. I think Collins just not being able to catch the ball this week was a big factor in that. But other than that, just a really solid game by ECU. East Carolina just played a great game, and there's nothing else to really say about it. So, moving on, we have SMU at Navy. Okay, SMU at this point, bowl chances are gone. Navy needs to win if they want to secure a bowl game. Also, hold on, sorry, I forgot. I'm going to go back to it. East Carolina with the win at home against Memphis in their final game of the season clenches a bowl game at 6-6. So huge win for East Carolina. They played like they needed to win in a game that they did need to win, and they're going to be rewarded with a bowl game. So moving on, SMU versus Navy. This is at SMU. All right, Navy's 4-6. They've got 2 games left. They got this week, and they got next week. It's the Army-Navy game. They need a win if they want to keep those bowl chances alive. And they were just not up to the task. SMU scores 10 early on in the first quarter, and Navy is only able to put up 3 late in the fourth. Final score 10-3. Just a bad game for Navy. And you see it reflected in the quarterback stats. I keep saying it. Navy's running game every week, week in, week out, is solid. What really is the difference and what really, decides if they're winning the game is how they perform in the air. And you see it this week. Benny Ramirez, 12 completions on 26 attempts, 58 yards, no touchdowns, and 2 interceptions. You can see it reflect just, 2 receivers, Alberto Martin, the starting running back, who's a quarterback, and Jamie Freese, wide receiver, went 1 for 1. Those were the only 100% completions. Everyone else went under 50% on catching the balls that were targeted to them. And you look, top receiver was Wes Osuna, 8 targets, 3 catches for 30 yards. And you're just not going to win a game like that. SMU had a bit of a revival. They've been struggling, and after a game, it's their final game of the season, and they end the season on a high note with a win. Tyler Graham showed some really nice flashes, 30 completions on 45 attempts for 261 yards and a touchdown, despite throwing 2 interceptions. Sam Connor had an okay game on the ground, 13 attempts for 86 yards. But if you really want to talk about on the ground, it's Navy backup running back Donald Perkins, who on 25 rush attempts, 137 yards. And Alberto Martin, you could argue he's behind him because less yards, but in terms of yards per attempt, Alberto Martin was in front of him, 11 attempts for 61 yards. Pretty good game in terms of yards on the ground. SMU looked good through the air, and Navy did not, and I feel like that was the difference maker in this game. Defenses played well. Navy just was not up to the task this week. They missed a field goal, which would have made it 6-10, but even then, they still lose that game. So, Navy just needed to dig deeper and find a little bit more. They were unable to. Next up, we have Temple at Syracuse. Temple at 6-5 has secured a bowl game, and Syracuse at 5-6 needs a win to get a bowl game. Game starts out tied 3-3, and Temple takes a 6-3 lead into the second half, where we stay locked until late in the fourth quarter, where Syracuse gets a touchdown, pulls a touchdown just out of thin air. Fourth quarter, put up the touchdown and win 10-6. I don't know if you're going to be if you're noticing a theme between these games, but I am, and that's one team's quarterback looks terrible in each game, and that was Syracuse's quarterback Elijah Barea. 6 completions on 21 attempts for 40 yards and an interception, just abysmal stats. Levon Levine, who's been looking really good for Temple, had an okay game, but was unable to find anyone for a touchdown. 24 completions on 41 attempts for 240 yards. Syracuse won this game because of their ground game. Julius Fernandez, starting running back, 13 rush attempts for 71 yards. Starting quarterback Elijah Barea on 10 scrambles, picked up 53 yards and the game-winning touchdown. And then they had a 38-yard rusher and Aquemius Palmer, sorry about that, that's a hard name, and a 33 rusher and Kawhi Coleman. Temple just was not productive on the ground. And when you look at the stats, Temple had the receiving stats, they had the yards, they just couldn't find the end zone. I feel like 9 out of 10 times Temple will win this game, but they get a little bit unlucky and cannot find the end zone, and that leads to them dropping this one 10-6. Very disappointing. They've executed everything perfectly except for getting into the end zone, which is always tough to come off. But Temple, already in a bowl game, was not too worried, and Syracuse, after that win, clenches a bowl game at 6-6. Next up, we have UCF at USF, and this game's a big one. USF needs to win if they want to get into a bowl game, but also UCF needs to win if they want to make the conference championship game. If UCF loses, then the conference championship game will be Tulane, who's already locked in at this point, will be playing against either USF, if they can make a big enough jump, or what's more likely, Temple. Despite the loss, because the way that it comes down to is it comes down to ranking in the polls. So if Temple is ahead of USF, if UCF doesn't win and Temple's ahead of them, you know, pretty much all you have to know about this game is UCF wins and they are locked in. UCF loses, and it's probably going to be Temple, but there's a chance that USF can sneak in. But really, USF is playing for a bowl game at this point. And this game was a tale of two halves. USF comes out determined to win against UCF, determined to make that bowl game and give them a shot at making the conference championship. The first half ends with USF up 10-14. And despite USF's best efforts, UCF is able to come back, scoring a touchdown in the third quarter and then scoring a late touchdown in the fourth quarter to take the lead. 53-yard pass from quarterback Deho Matin to wide receiver Seth Polino. Garrett Green's extra point is through, and UCF is able to hang on and win. USF missed a field goal earlier in the game, but would not have changed the outcome, as it still would have been 13-14. You look through the stats, and both teams played well. Kyle Higbee, 11 completions for 148 yards. We know he's not too good in the passing game, so that's a nice stat line for him, despite the one interception. Deho Matin, starting in his first game as quarterback late in the season, UCF, they were on a bit of a slide, decided to make a quarterback change, and Deho Matin steps up. You saw, like I said, he made a 53-yard pass to his wide receiver to get the game-winning touchdown in the fourth quarter. That was huge. 17 completions on 32 attempts for 196 yards, 2 touchdowns. He threw 1 interception, but great game by Deho Matin. And what you usually see from UCF, what we've seen all year, is quarterback has not been great, which they flipped the script here. If quarterback came out and they did good and won the game for him, but they've really relied on the running game, and that's something that you didn't see. Steven Herter, who has been great back throughout the season, on 9 attempts was only able to pick up 16 yards. Just an off game. Despite this, UCF's able to power through and get the win. So big for them. But, just a huge game for UCF as they clinch the conference championship game and now finish the regular season at 7-5. Tied for best in the AAC. So, next up, we got Tulane at Cincinnati. This game, going into it, does not matter in terms of making bowl games. Tulane has already clinched, and they're on a bit of a losing streak, but they've already clinched the conference championship. Cincinnati at 4-7 has no chance at a bowl game. Tulane is just looking. They're trying to make a playoff spot, but even then, they're not too confident in their chances. Going into this game at 7-3, though, they're not completely out of it. And this game was a big hit for them as Cincinnati quarterback Brandon Shipley leads the offense to a 30-10 win over Tulane, scoring 13 points in the first quarter, 7 points in the second quarter, and 10 points in the third quarter. 19 for 38, 188 yards, and 2 touchdowns, no interceptions. Bronson Morrow, who's been pretty good all season, failed to find, consistency. He went 15 for 33 for 207 yards, 1 touchdown, but 3 interceptions. The level-headed quarterback who usually is making the good reads just was off today. You saw Sir Anthony Dudley have a bit of an off game for Cincinnati on the ground, only 60 yards on 21 attempts, but you saw Tulane Mitchell Grilly be the one to step up and really make an impact on the ground. And this guy is a fullback who was playing running back number 1. They decided to put him at running back number 1 for, a little bit of an experiment. And the experiment's over. They decided not to go with it, but he put up some decent numbers at his time as RB1. In this game, 20 attempts, 103 yards. So really good game by Haloti Thomas. Sorry, not Haloti Thomas, Mitchell Grilly. You look at receiving, Dallas Sands, the wide receiver for Cincinnati, had a great game. 11 targets, 6 catches for 103 yards and a touchdown. But that's about it. And then you look at Tulane and Travion Love, 9 targets, 5 catches, 69 yards. Devontae Pena, 6 targets, 5 catches for 79 yards and a touchdown. Where's that big receiver who's been in the Heisman race all season? Fernando Thomas, 8 targets, 3 catches for 26 yards. Just a really bad game for Fernando Thomas. He had the least yards out of all the wide receivers that were targeted. And I'm not counting fullbacks and I'm not counting tight ends. All the wide receivers that were targeted, because even wide receiver 4, Deshaun Knight, on his one target was able to get a 28-yard catch. Just a very off game for Mitchell Grilly. For Fernando Thomas. And something that saw his Heisman chances plummet pretty much into the spot where he's out of the conversation. Cincinnati played great defense to, not just lock down Tulane's top target, but even to get the level-headed and field general, who's really smart on the field, who always makes the right throws, to throw 3 interceptions, which is a season high for him. Just a great job by them. So final score 30-10. Cincinnati finishes the season at 5-7 as Tulane drops more to 7-4 at this point. Next up, we have Houston. We have Tulsa at Houston. Hold on, I gotta switch. We got Tulsa at Houston. This game is another big one. Houston 5-6. Tulsa 5-6. This is 2 teams in the AAC who have struggled up to this point, but they have a chance to get a win, hit 500, and play in a bowl game, and it's all about who wants it more. Tulsa starts off firing by getting 7 points, and that's our lead going into halftime. Tulsa's up 7-0. But then in the third, little early in the third, Houston ties it up at 7-7. And going into the fourth quarter, it's a 7-7 game. Okay? Now, let me just take you through the play-by-play here going into the fourth quarter. All right? So, we're in the fourth quarter. Tulsa has the ball, and they're driving, but they just cannot do it. 29 yard field goal attempt is good. Tulsa goes up. Oh, sorry. My bad. Just starting over. Tulsa's got the ball to start the fourth quarter, and they throw an interception. And Houston is the one who drives down and gets a 29-yard field goal. They now take the lead 10-7. All right. Big sack on the first play of the drive, 11-yard sack, but Ekeley is sacked for 11 yards. And despite that, they're still able to pick up the first yard, but the first down with a 28-yard run, but cannot get much past that. They have to punt it away. And let's count the plays. Devontae Doyle, 30-yard run. Trevor Cawthron to Michael Kirksey, 50 yards. Touchdown Houston. Houston takes the lead. With the extra point, no good, 16-7. Okay, and now we're going through this a little bit more. And we're scrolling. We're going through the play-by-play. And Evan Coleman makes a 23-yard field goal. Tulsa's back in this game. With about 3 minutes left, it's a 16-10 game. It's a one-possession game. Tulsa can, if they can get the ball back, they can drive down and score a touchdown to win it. But Houston is not letting that happen. They keep the ball on the ground. Quarterback turned running back Devontae Doyle is picking up first downs in two plays each. 2 first downs, and they start throwing it. Throw it 8 yards. Doyle, 0-yard carry. And on the final play with 7 seconds left, DPI, game over. Houston wins 16-10. Tulsa, after a great season, winning the national championship, rocky start, and looked really good at the end of the season, but just was not good enough. Just didn't have enough to make a bowl game. Houston will go on to make a bowl game. Trevor Cawthron, 11 completions, 25 attempts for 130 yards. Maurice Ekeley, 20 completions on 26 attempts for 161 yards. Ekeley and Cawthron both had a touchdown. Cawthron threw 2 interceptions, while Ekeley only threw 1. Okay? But the real story, and you know it when I talk about this team, it's the ground game. And that's former quarterback turned running back Devontae Doyle. 30 attempts on the ground, 151 yards and a touchdown. Just another great game for him on the ground. Brandon Pipkins for Tulsa had a little bit in him, but not that much. 17 attempts for 63 yards. And then you look at the receiving stats. Obviously, Kirksey with that 50-yard touchdown. He was up there. 10 targets, 5 catches, 93 yards, and a touchdown. But Tulsa wasn't completely out of it in the passing game. Sterling Rios, the tight end, 7 targets, 6 catches for 79 yards. Tony Sherman, 6 targets for 4 catches, 34 yards, and a touchdown. Just couldn't find enough in them. Tough loss by Tulsa, but Houston is going on to a bowl game. And that is the end of Week 13. That was the end of Week 13. We have the teams in the conference who are going to bowl games. We have them set, but it's Week 14, and you know what that means. It's time for some rivalry games. And let's start off with the first game that was played. That was Saturday at noon. It was the Army-Navy game. Navy at 4-7, Army at 5-6. Navy at this point is not playing for a bowl game, but Army is. Army needs to get a win if they want to make a bowl game, and Navy knows that. And this game was a good one. Army takes an early lead, 3-0 in the first quarter. Then at the end of the first quarter, Navy puts up in the second quarter. Sorry, I'm tripping over my words. I haven't done this in a couple weeks. That's my bad. But Navy puts up 10 points. Army puts up 3. We go into halftime. It's 10-6. Navy knows they've got the lead. Navy knows that they're playing for pride, and at this point, they do not want Army to make a bowl game. And that's the message going out into the second half. Our season's over after this. The message at the halftime, the message the coach gave the players at halftime was, our season's over after this last half. So put every drop of talent, of skill, put everything you have in you on that field in that second half. Get us a win against Army and stop them from getting into a bowl game, and that's exactly what they did. 13 points in the third quarter, 13 points in the fourth quarter. Army only puts up 7, and Navy takes this one 36-13. Apologies if you're able to hear my dog barking in the background. And like I said it earlier, Navy lives and dies by the passing game. That's what makes the difference and determines if they're going to win or lose. And you see that in this game. Benny Ramirez, 25 completions, 35 attempts for 336 yards, 2 touchdowns, and 2 interceptions. While Army quarterback Jose Dedman just isn't up to the task. 16 completions on 27 attempts for 145 yards. And an interception. Then you look on the ground. Donald Perkins, 22 attempts for 100 yards. Albert Martin, quarterback turned running back, 15 attempts for 76 yards and 3 touchdowns. On the ground for Army, 14 attempts, 72 yards for Rob Wells. For Jonathan Perez, it was 13 attempts for 59 yards and a touchdown. And those were the top guys on the ground in this game. But like I said, Navy is the difference. What separates Navy from a bad team to a good team and gets them to win these games is their passing game. Wes Asuna, wide receiver, 11 targets, 8 catches, 134 yards. Tevin Griffin III, this is another wide receiver, 11 targets, 8 catches, 121 yards, and a touchdown. Brent Bridges, tight end, 8 targets, 6 catches, 81 yards, and a touchdown, and that is what is able to make the difference and get Navy the win over their rivals, Army. Army will miss a bowl game because of this, and Navy, despite not finishing the season as good as they want to be, and despite only being 5-7 at the end of the season and missing a bowl game, based on those last 2 quarters they played, there is a lot to be excited about if you are a Navy fan. They got those last 2 quarters. They looked really good. They got some really nice looking recruits coming in. The future is starting to look bright for Navy. So, that they're going to be a fun team to watch. And, again, just going to be such a fun team to watch throughout this. And, with their coach, who's pretty solid as he figures things out, he gets his own guys in there. They're going to. This is going to be a team that's going to be at the top of the AAC, and given some time. And now we've got the last game of Week 14, and it's the last game before the conference championship game is, released. And it's Tulane at Air Force, the Brothers Bowl. So I, K Green 829, coach Tulane, and my brother, J Green 816, year one, decided to coach Air Force. And while he hasn't participated in this season, he was there at the start, and we've pretty much made it a thing that we want to try and schedule, a matchup between us every year. Air Force took the first meeting, beating Tulane last year, and this edition of the Brothers Bowl, is a little different. Air Force is 4-7, and Tulane is 7-4. So their records are going to be flipped no matter what. Tulane, this is their final game of the season, and they're still fighting, just a little bit, but they're still fighting for a playoff berth. And they need to win this game if they want to keep their small chances alive. And against an Air Force team that has not done too good, Tulane brings out everything. They win 45-10, absolutely crushing Air Force, who had a really good recruiting class last year. And you look at these stat lines, Air Force couldn't get much going. Go. Sorry about that. My dog was doing something. My other dog was doing something in the back. Anthony Sweeney, Air Force's quarterback, 11 for 23, 93 yards, 1 touchdown, 1 interception. And that's not too good. But you look over to the other side. Bronson Morrill, 25 completions, 46 attempts, 502 yards, 5 touchdowns, and 4 interceptions. The 4 interceptions is a season high, and it's something that Tulane's working on, but they loved what they saw with the amount of yards. He got almost 11 yards per attempt in this game. Then you look on the ground. Air Force had Marquise Ash, 16 attempts for 71 yards, but other than that, didn't have any success running the ball. And Tulane, like usual, struggles to run the ball, but Haloti Thomas, 8 attempts, 35 yards, was able to get 1 touchdown on the ground. Then you look, and I talked about how he was MIA last week, but he is back. Fernando Thomas is back, and with a performance that, despite his bad performance last week, is able to, put him back, while not a favorite, and while unlikely to win it, it's able to put him back in the conversation for Heisman, and might be a push to, get him that wide receiver of the year award. 19 targets, 11 catches, 255 yards, and 2 touchdowns, 23.18 yards per catch. And where is that? And who's second? That's junior wide receiver, who's going to be filling in for Fernando Thomas next year when Thomas goes to the draft. Travion Love, 14 targets. He had 14 targets, and while he didn't do as much as Fernando Thomas did, he did enough to show these Tulane faithful that despite losing Fernando Thomas, they are in good hands. 14 targets, 8 catches, 129 yards, and 2 touchdowns. And then wide receiver 3, who might go up to wide receiver 2. We'll see. It all depends on how they do in training camp. But Devontae Pena, 7 targets, 5 catches for 77 yards. And then, you look across the board, every wide receiver for Tulane was getting involved. Deshaun Knight, on 3 targets, only had 1 catch. But that catch went for 41 yards and a touchdown. So, very impressive game. Those are the 5 touchdowns through the air for Tulane. And a big part of why they went 45 and 10. There was a bit of a question about wide receivers, and Tulane made a point to go after some highly coveted wide receivers in recruiting. And while they got them, looks like it won't be as big of a problem as they thought. It's going to be a big help for when Travion Love and Devontae Pena go, but this game really showed that the wide receivers are ready to step up, and there's players on this team who are ready to step up for players that are leaving, which is very promising for certain positions. So with that win, Tulane goes to 8-4. Air Force falls to 4-8, and 5-6 with the head-to-head win over Army. Navy is technically the top service academy school, tied in record with Army at both 5-7, but with Air Force losing and going 4-8. It's between Army and Navy, and I think it stays at Navy with their win over. I think it goes to Navy with the win over Army, cementing them as the number one service academy team. And right before we finish, this is not the end of the episode, but it's we've got the conference championship ready, and that's going to be up. In like a second for you, but until we get there, because I have to wait for it to be simmed, the rankings, these are the rankings. I'm going to pull them up there. These are the rankings for the AAC, and they won't really change too much. There's only two that can really change. Tulane at 1, 8-4, 5-3 in conference. UCF 7-5, 5-3 in conference. Temple 6-6, 5-3 in conference. East Carolina 6-6, 4-4 in conference. Houston 6-6, 4-4 in conference. Navy 5-7, 4-4 in conference play. USF 5-7, 4-4 in conference play. Tulsa 5-7, 4-4 in conference play. SMU 4-8, 4-4 in conference play. Memphis 3-9, 3-5 in conference play. Cincinnati 5-7, 2-6 in conference play. And what this shows you, these three teams that are 5-4 and all these teams that are 4-4, is what I've been preaching all year. The American Conference, the AAC, is a very tightly contested conference. Like, I mean, you look, one game difference. Like, you change, like, 1 or 2 games, and you can go from Tulane UCF in the championship game, in the conference championship game, to Tulsa and SMU, or, Navy and East Carolina, or Houston and South Florida, or Temple and another team. It just shows how close this has been all season. So, like I said, conference championship game, that's going to be up next. It's going to be just like a few seconds. It's going to be instant for you guys. It's going to be a couple days for me. So I'll see you guys when we get back to the conference championship game slate. Okay. It is now Saturday night, so conference championship games have been run. It's 11:55, so recruiting is going to be running a second. So after I do this segment on the conference championship game, I'm probably going to do a segment on recruiting. So, that'll come after it. But getting on to the conference championship game, we had UCF at Tulane. This is the second time they met up, and the first match, UCF took the loss. But with new coach R. Murty, they're going to be looking for revenge. 8-4 Tulane going up against 7-5 Tulane. This is the Saturday, 12 p.m. game, and boy, did this game have some fireworks. I got my little highlight thing over here. You start off, and on the third play of the game, Tulane's strong safety Marvin Norris intercepts Deho Matten. After 3 straight incompletions, Tulane gets a 39-yard field goal and goes up 3-0. You have lots of nice passes. Bronson Morrow, 40-yard touchdown pass to Sean Knight. And then he finds on another drive, he finds Fernando Thomas for 35 yards. One play later, he finds him again, this time for 24 yards and a touchdown. Bronson Morrow had a 51-yard pass to Travion Love, but on the next play was intercepted by UCF cornerback Clint Upton. Bronson Morrow also found Haloti Thomas for a 2-yard touchdown. That is quarterback to quarterback touchdown. And then Daho Matin was intercepted by Kyle R., which was then returned 42 yards. Those were the little highlights I have. I've written down final score of the game: Tulane 41, UCF 0. So just going into this game, the breakdown: Tulane scored 17 in the first quarter, 14 in the second quarter, 10 in the third quarter, and then was scoreless in the fourth quarter. But just a dominant performance. Tulane just matches up well against UCF. UCF is known for having really, really solid defense. And, Tulane, with their explosive offense, just was able to overcome the defense. We saw it last time they played, and we saw it this time. Bronson Morrill, on 47 attempts, had 29 completions for 528 yards. That's 11.23 yards per attempt, 5 touchdowns, 1 interception, and was sacked twice. Fullback Mitchell Grilly, in probably his last start, as Tulane is looking to move in another direction for next season, and what looks to be his last start at running back. The fullback, on 16 carries, gets 82 yards, no touchdowns on the ground for Tulane, but a nice performance for Grilly, and what might end up being his last start for Tulane. Going over to the receivers, Fernando Thomas targeted 21 times, has 11 catches, 232 yards, and 3 touchdowns. Travion Love, on 9 targets, made 7 catches for 129 yards. Devontae Pena, on 4 targets, made 3 catches for 86 yards. And Deshaun Knight, on 5 targets, got 2 catches for 50 yards and a touchdown. And then, of course, we have Haloti Thomas on his 1 target. He made the 2-yard catch for his touchdown. Like I said, quarterback-to-quarterback connection for the touchdown on that one. And you had Kyle R., Xavier Beto, and Marvin Norris of Tulane. That's free safety Kyle R., cornerback Xavier Beto, and strong safety Marvin Norris of Tulane, each getting an interception in this game. And there's not much to say about it. Adam Edwards, kicker for Tulane, 5 for 5 on extra point, and 2 for 3 on field goals. So he had a nice performance himself. He's been a little shaky at times. Clint Upton played great for UCF, 7 tackles, 1 interception, but the cornerback just didn't have enough in him, and the team didn't have enough in him to contain this explosive Tulane air raid offense. Talking about Tulane's defense, they did a good job. They made some nice plays to get turnovers every once in a while, but just throughout the entire game, you go through the play-by-play, and you just see just solid defense by Tulane. Forcing some 3-and-outs, some textbook bend but don't break after big gains by UCF. They go and they shut them down right after that. A lot of big plays by UCF. A lot of stuff that UCF that a lot of big plays by Tulane's defense. Sorry about that. A lot of stuff that Tulane defense has to be proud of. I could go into this some more, and but just by every metric, Tulane dominated this game. It was a good matchup between 2 great teams, and Tulane just, it comes down a little bit to matchup. Tulane matches up well against UCF as opposed to some other teams in the conference, and, just Tulane, just a lot of stuff added up to it, and by every metric, Tulane dominated this game. Great job by UCF. They had a great season. They're going to finish, they're 7-6 after this, and then they're going to have a bowl game. But, Coach Armurti, still not 100% sure how to pronounce it, came in, towards the end of the season, and I know this is a disappointing loss for them, but great season by them. They played great all season. Had a great win against USF last week. And a lot of stuff for this UCF team to be proud of despite their performance in this game. And before I move on, I just want to say this has been a great season for AAC. I've been so happy, to cover it. It's been so much fun. Every team has, despite records, and even with records, a lot of the teams in the AAC, pretty much every team has had some big wins, had some big moments. I look forward to doing this again next season. Trying to go a little bit more in depth. I look forward to another, as we close out our second season and my first season of doing this. I can't say enough about how fun this was. But without further ado, I am here to present your 2022 American Conference Championships, the Tulane Green Wave. Just a great performance by them. There's not much else to say. That's all I really have to say about it. They had a great performance, and now that it's 12:02, I'm putting it on the discussion. I am going to end this recording, and I'm going to start up a new one once we get recruiting done, and I'll go over AAC commitments. I haven't done it in a while, and I'm going to do something with classes once they're done, but I'm going to go over the commitments for the AAC this week. And then that'll be the end of our show. Hello. All right, so we're back now after recruiting has been won. It is now, 11:30 Sunday night. So let's get into the discussions. Next week is the start of bowl games. Tulane, the team that had the best chance of finishing and making the playoffs, finishes 9-4, 6-3 in conference, and just barely misses out on the playoffs, ending up the 16th ranked team, just a couple spots out of the playoffs. But now we have bowl games to look forward to, and we have about half of the AAC making bowl games. Tulane, as I mentioned, 9-4 is going to make a bowl game. Temple at 6-6 are also going to make a bowl game. UCF at 7-6 are going to make a bowl game. East Carolina at 6-6 are going to make a bowl game, and Houston at 6-6 is also going to make a bowl game. So that's 5 teams making a bowl game out of the 11 teams in the AAC. We had 4 more teams after that were 5-7 that were right on the cusp but just couldn't make it. So a lot of good teams. But we will look forward and we will go over those bowl games and go over them more once we get the schedule and sim it. But now moving on, it is time for recruiting, and this week in recruiting was a big one for the AAC. The AAC brought in 11 recruits this week and made up 15% of all committed players this week. First up, I don't have any edits for this position because it's really hard to find, templates, and I can't make my own from scratch yet. But you got someone, and by me not making edits, that's no disrespect. I love this position. They don't get a lot of love, but Temple starts it off with getting a punter, Travis Croker, C overall, C plus potential, 5'11", 198, out of Midlothian, Virginia. Power guy, 4 stars, 100%. So big get, punters, not the most flashy, but always an important position to get. Next up, we have Thomas Wilson, offensive guard out of Downingtown, Pennsylvania. 3-star pass blocking offensive guard. C overall, a potential. Not somebody they're taking for now, but somebody that they're looking to develop for the future. Temple gets them with 53% odds. Kansas State had 47% odds, but he goes to Temple on this one. Will be somebody that, while we don't expect to see start year 1, year 2, year 3, year 4, I will look to see, for some improvement from him. Maybe see him getting some snaps. Next up's another player I don't have an edit for, but we still care about them a lot. Benjamin Young, punter, commits to Tulsa with 100% odds out of St. Peters, Missouri. C overall, C potential, power, 4-star guy, 6'2", 185. Big get for Tulsa. I mean, as punchers are overlooked a lot, but they can really change a game just by flipping the field. Now moving on, we've got a really big one. Somebody that I've looked at, but I kind of backed out of. It's Robert Villar going to University of Houston. This was a bit of a steal with 45% odds. They took it away from Texas, who had 55% odds. 4-star offensive tackle, pass blocking guy, B overall, C potential. Looks like a guy that we might see start next year. Out of Houston, Texas, so staying local. He went to Klein Forest High School, 6'3", 287. This dude is a mountain. So really, really big get for Houston. Really talented player. Brings a lot of size and a lot of skill to this Houston team. Next up, we have 4-star defensive end Jacob Owens committing to Tulane. Like I said, 4-star defensive end, C overall, C potential, 6'4", 298 pounds. This guy's a big dude. The picture that I chose does not do him justice, but this guy is big. Out of Harlan, sorry about that. I had to deal with something. But out of Harlan, Iowa, 50-50 split between Tulane and Minnesota, and Tulane comes away with this one. A big get for them as they are trying to really add and really build up that defense. As they noticed by the end of the season that the running game was not a good, it was a very big weakness for them. Next, we got another Tulane commit, and it's their second outside linebacker of the cycle, 4-star run stopper Gregory Barr. C overall, C potential, 6'3", 238. But this was a big one. Virginia Tech, Tulane, and Minnesota were all in on it. Virginia Tech had 39% odds, Minnesota with 29%. But Tulane gets the commitment with 32% odds. Out of Cleveland, Georgia, he went to White County High School. This will be a big impact, as we mentioned, Tulane trying to build up that defense to stop the run. This will be a huge get with Gregory Barr. Now, moving out of Tulane, let's get to another school. A school that hasn't been too good in terms of recruiting, but a school that's getting a really big get in commitment, and that is Memphis, getting Joseph Johnson, the wide receiver. 4-star wide receiver, possession archetype, B overall, B minus potential, out of Baxter, Tennessee. This is a really great pickup. 49% odds for Memphis, 51% odds for University of Kentucky, so Memphis stole him, but this guy is good. 4 stars, he's got the B overall, and then with B minus potential, he's going to have some nice growth. It's a really, really big get for Memphis. Hometown kid from Tennessee, from Baxter, Tennessee, went to Upperman High School. So 6'1", 191, he's pretty big for a wide receiver. 6'1", gives him a lot, and that really fits him with his possession archetype. He'll be somebody who can, he'll be one of the tallest receivers on the field for that team. And, I mean, that'll be a big advantage for him, just being able to, have that extra size to go up and get those footballs. Will be a great wide receiver for Memphis, and I cannot wait to watch him play, because that is just going to be, he just looks like a beast. Next up, we move on to another school who, while they're not top 10, they are very quietly putting together a very good team, and that is Navy. They get a commitment from defensive tackle Earl Matthews. 3-star guy, but this is somebody that, the plans are for the future, but that's okay. C overall, B potential. He's a balanced CT. He's 6'4", 290, so he's a big dude. He's coming out of Vero Beach, Florida. Navy was the only one in on him, 100% odds. Vero Beach, Florida. Of course, Florida is a great pipeline for recruiting. A lot of good recruits and a lot of good players come out of Florida. So this will be a big get for Navy. He wanted to go to a service academy, and Navy sees that and just, cannot pass up. I mean, he has the size, which is something that you cannot teach, and he's got some nice potential. Big get for Navy here. Next up, we have, we have a couple more. Like I said, 11 recruits this week, so there's a lot to get through. But we have Willie Lovett out of Bainbridge, Georgia. 3-star ball hawk cornerback, C overall, B+ potential. Another guy that looks like he will progress and become pretty good. He's got some nice potential. Navy, he had an affinity for service. Navy could not pass that up. They go in on him, 100% odds, and they get him. 5'11", 179. So while he's a good height for a cornerback, and he is going to focus mainly on getting in the way and trying to get those interceptions over coverage, which can be good if he is good enough. I can't wait to watch him. And with Memphis picking up that wide receiver Joseph Johnson, I mean, I don't know. They're coming in the same recruiting class. Maybe we'll see some battles between Willie Lovett and Joseph Johnson signing on the same week to different teams in the same conference. Who knows? But will it be exciting to watch them develop and grow? Next up, we got 2 more. I'm speeding through this because there's a lot, but we got 2 more. And they're both by the same team, and that's East Carolina University, who has really been heating up recently, getting 2 this week. Well, here's the first one. Tight end Samuel Slaughter, 6'2", 243 pounds. This is another 3-star guy, and a guy they're looking for potential. C overall, B+ potential. He's a receiving tight end, though, out of Morehead City, North Carolina. He had the close-to-home affinity, and ECU had to pick that up. And they were the only one in on him. 100% odds. He goes to ECU. Nice and clean. ECU gets a nice tight end for the future. And next, we have, somebody who, in terms of future, this week, committing to an AAC school is my favorite. I think he's got the most upside out of anyone that committed this week. That is Eric Nelson. Outside linebacker, speed guy, speedster, 3 stars, C overall, but A- potential. Out of Potomac, Maryland. Sorry about that. 6 foot, 230 pounds. This is a guy that he relies on his speed, and he can cover the field from sideline to sideline. He can just get anywhere to stop the run. So really, really great pickup, and a guy that's got a lot of potential for this ECU team. And now, before we wrap it up, let's go through the rankings for recruiting, and we're just gonna skip through and talk about the AAC teams. We got Tulane at the number 1 team in recruiting in the AAC. They have the 7th best class right now with 8 signees. Just really solid. Have won a lot of battles with 2 5-stars and now 6 4-stars in their class. They're really putting things. They're really putting things together. And while they are looking to move away from blue chip recruits and look more for some upside, they may have another trick or two on some 4-stars. But who knows? For now, it looks like they're going to go for 3 stars. Next up, you have at 10, 3 spots lower. They're really close. They're really closing in. And you have Tulsa with 9 commitments. Tulsa just bringing in a punter this week, but has brought in some really, really good, commitments in the past couple weeks. I mean, obviously, you got the big name in Cesar Chacon, the number 1 scrambling quarterback in the nation, going to Tulsa. And, they have a lot of other stuff going for them. I'm going to dive into all these classes a little bit deeper in a later show, when recruiting's done. But, a lot of great guys for Tulsa. They've always been up at the top, so that's 2 teams in the top 10. Then you're wondering, all right, let's get... The AAC is not a big conference. Maybe, that's it. We got 2 teams in the top 10, then a big drop-off. Not really. You go down to rank 16, where you now have East Carolina with their 2 signees from this week. At number, they've got 9 commitments, and they've looked really good. And then right behind them at 17 is Navy. They've got 10 commitments. They got another 2 this. They got 2 this week to bring them up to 10, which was huge. And I mean, they've also been a team. Like I said, quietly putting together a good team. They got a quarterback whose name I cannot pronounce, and I'm going to butcher it, so I am sorry in advance, Syndicate. But Kyung Hee, I think is how you pronounce it. He's got some offensive linemen to go to that class, and adding this week a defensive tackle and a cornerback. Really nice, really nice class for Navy so far. Then at 25, you have Houston. They only have 6 commitments so far, but their commitments are big. Bringing in Robert Villar this week, a big offensive tackle, really good get for them. And I mean, they haven't brought in a lot, but the people they have brought in have been really talented. After that, there's a bit of a drop off, and that's not because of a lack of recruiting. That's because, people were coming into the sim a little bit later. They haven't been recruiting since the beginning of the season, like those teams that I mentioned in the top 25. So while they are lower, I'm not saying it's because they're worse at recruiting. They just haven't had as much time to build their classes. But as you scroll down and you get to these last couple classes, you have at 55 Temple they have 3 commitments. Obviously, I went over 2 of them, the punter and the offensive guard, going after some smaller guys just trying to establish themselves. Memphis, right behind them at 56 with their 1 commit. Joseph Johnson was their first commit, and I will say that is a huge get. I mean, to come in late and get a commit with this guy, a 4-star receiver with, he's good now. He's got some good potential. Somebody I'm really excited for. Huge get from Memphis. Huge one for them. Congratulations on their first recruit. And then that's it for teams in the AAC that have gotten it. I do know, though, that, SMU joined recently, and this was his first cycle. So obviously doesn't have any commitments yet, but, he's working. He's going to be working on it. So good luck to him. I know UCF has a new coach, Armurti. They're working on getting some recruits to come to UCF. I know they were in on a guy that went to New Mexico. Darth Jar Jar getting a steal there that I was also in on. But Darth Jar Jar gets the steal on that one. So UCF still waiting for their first recruit. But they're on the trail. They're looking for people. And there's probably some other people that I'm forgetting right now. I'm not completely caught up. But there's probably some more people in the AAC that I'm forgetting. But like I said, a lot of good recruiting and a lot of people who are doing pretty good. So a lot of stuff to be excited for in the AAC as far as recruiting. That's all I've got for the show this week. And that's going to be it until next week. When I see you next, we will have some teams. We've got about half the AAC done with the division, or done with the season. When I see you next week, we're going to have some more teams finishing their seasons off. We're going to be talking about and just going over and reviewing some teams. I think I might do like an episode on each team of the AAC, just going over their season, just to kind of have something at the end where, you can look back and you can really see, what each team has accomplished this season. So that's going to be it for this week. I will see you next week. And, I do have some, like I've said it before in this one, but I do have some off-season shows planned. So get ready for that. So thank you. I've been your host, KGreen829, and I will see you next week on the AAC show.